It's I-80 Rivalry Week. Robin Washut of Husker Online is going to join us to talk about all things Nebraska and Creighton, how the Huskers are undefeated up until this point, what's next for Fred Hoiberg and his team, and a whole lot more. It's the Roll Jays podcast.
Heads up, it's the Roll Jays podcast, the voice of the Creighton basketball fan. With your hosts, Jimmie Allen and Casey Matthews. Join the crew and meet CU players, coaches, and a whole lot more. Now, the Roll Jays podcast. Here's Jimmie Allen.
Welcome into the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pepper Jack's Grill and Pyramid Contractors. Jimmie Allen, Casey Matthews, now joined by Robin Washut of Husker Online. Robin, thanks for being here. We appreciate your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me, guys.
Obviously, it's a big week in the state of Nebraska. The I-80 rivalry is underway. It's officially Creighton and Nebraska hate week between Nebraska and Omaha right now, with Lincoln and Omaha being divided by I-80. How has Nebraska been able to start the season undefeated? What's different about this year's group of Huskers?
Well, I mean, compared to last year, first and foremost, it's shooting. They actually have more than 2 or 3 guys that are capable of making a three-pointer on any given night, and that's starts with getting Rienk Mast back. I mean, that's 1A of all this discussion. Getting him healthy and then him playing at an all-conference level. That's kind of what this whole formula for their off-season roster plan was built around, was getting Rienk back to full strength and then surrounding him with 4 shooters at the time, at all times. And they've been able to do that with guys they were able to retain and then going to the portal, adding players like Price Sanford and the like. And so they've been a significantly better just shooting team. And that's allowed Fred to play more to his 5-out style, which he really hasn't been able to do to this extent since he's been here. Maybe 2 years ago they were close, but even that NCAA tournament team in 23-24, they didn't have the number of shooters, the volume top to bottom roster that this one does. So that's been the big difference right now. They took care of business against some bye games, but the real difference was they were able to make the most of those neutral site games. Obviously, Sioux Falls, you can call it neutral site, it's anything but to start out and beat Oklahoma in the fashion that they did, coming back from 16, that gave them some real juice going into Kansas City, and they were able to carry that over with a New Mexico game where they almost blew a 20-point lead, but were able to rally together and find yet another way to deal with adversity. And they followed that up, beating Kansas State, which we'll see what that win ends up looking like after that Bowling Green game. But that, I think, was kind of the springboard to them being where they are now, where they won the games that they were supposed to, but the difference is that they've played well and overcome varying degrees of adversity in those neutral site games, to where now, starting Sunday, they enter this kind of defining December stretch with a lot of confidence and a lot of momentum compared to previous years.
Yeah, you're talking a lot about the offense, and I've obviously with Coach Hoiberg, you always know he's an unbelievable offensive coach, and they're going to have a good scheme, they're going to have a good plan. But like you said, you got to have the guys around or guys on the team that can execute and hit the shots. But I feel like they're also pretty good defensively. They're under 1 point per possession defensively. They're at 9.8 on the year, but they seem to be really guarding. What's different this year for them defensively? On the flip side of what you just talked about with their shooting.
I think a lot of it is, on the perimeter, it starts with Sam Hoiberg. He's probably one of the best perimeter on-ball defenders, certainly on the team, and one of the better in the conference, in my opinion. Even for his size, he's able to play a lot bigger than he is. But I think the difference is Berke Buyuktuncel, where he is arguably, from an analytical standpoint, their best post defender, and it's not even close. And so when he's on the floor, you just look at just the metrics from when he's on and when he's off. Nebraska dives off a cliff defensively because they don't defend the post nearly as well. They don't defensive rebound nearly as well. So he's kind of been that linchpin for them defensively that keeps it all together, and it makes them a much better defensive team, not only with their perimeter guys, but probably as good of a low post defensive team as they've been, especially when they have that big lineup with him and Rienk together on the floor. So it's kind of a combination of things where, one, they've always been decently effective with Nate Lenzer's scheme. It leaves them vulnerable to three-pointers, but they've been really good at being able to take away the paint and forcing teams to have to hit perimeter shots to beat them. But then when you pair that with not having to overcommit so much to the paint because you have Berke playing so well, because you have a healthy Rienk Mast back, that's allowed them to defend the perimeter better than they have in previous years. So it's kind of been a ripple effect, starting with Berke on the inside, and then everybody else has improved because of it.
Well, Berke got a little dinged up in the last game. Is he expected to be full go for Sunday?
Yeah, so he got hurt on the first possession against Kansas State. He rolled his ankle really badly and ended up playing him almost 25 minutes through that pain. And then the next few days, it really swelled up on him. So he missed the Winthrop game. And, to my point, look how bad they were defensively. They gave up a ton of offensive rebounds and just really let Winthrop get to the paint at ease. And, that was a real concerning thing. So he came back against USC Upstate and, helped them a lot in that regard. So he'll be healthy. He's available. He made it through that game with no issues. And, I think the question is, can they get a guy like Leo Curtis back? Leo Curtis has been out since, I guess, before the Oklahoma game with a calf strain, and there's a chance he could come back Sunday. It kind of just depends on how he makes it through these next few days of practices as they ramp up his workload with contact on the court. But if it's not Sunday, then there's a real chance he'll be back for the Big Ten opener against Wisconsin. So that would be another piece, having a 7'1" guy that can move the way he can, just to have another big body down there to take some of the pressure and minutes off of Rienk and Berke would go a long way. So they just lost Connor for the season, which is disappointing, but they're close to starting to getting some guys back. With Leo, Berke's healthy again. And then, looking further down the road, Ugnias Yarosevicius, the Central Michigan transfer, he's probably looking more like a late December. I'm targeting that December 21st game against North Dakota as maybe a realistic target date for his return. So, they've had some bad injury luck early, but slowly but surely they're starting to get healthier. And getting Leo back on Sunday would be a great start.
Hey, Casey, you want to go and take a crack at repeating that name?
Not a chance. I'm sitting here listening.
Fast enough, no one's going to judge you. Just say it really fast.
I just, it's funny when you're, and I was never really one to have to give scouting reports, but sometimes, you'd be in meetings and you'd be like, I'm just going to go with the first name, maybe the number, if it was a name that you were able to pronounce. Yeah. So I like what you said there about Berke, and I'm interested in your thoughts here, because as I look at the rosters and kind of look at skill sets, I believe you're going to see Jason Green guarding Mast, and I think you're going to start Owen on Berke. And so the flip side of that for you guys, would you think that's consistent for you guys on the other end? And the reason I ask that is if Berke is, as you're talking about, I've seen a little bit that he's a very good low post defender. It makes more sense for him to be on an Owen Freeman and put Mast on Jason. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how much they go with that big lineup. They might have to go a little smaller just to kind of combat Creighton. A lot of times their rotations are just based on, opposing matchups. So I'm thinking back to like when they played Iowa, they would double Freeman every time he got the ball in the paint. Yep. And it worked sometimes.
Do you think they'll do that?
I know. They do it though. Like that's what they do. And I think, again, the good news is they don't have to do it as much as they have in previous years, because you have Berke, because you have Rienk, and especially if you get Leo in there, you don't have to compensate so much. But that's what they do. When the ball goes to the baseline, they're going to trap the baseline and try to get deflections off kick-out passes when guys start to panic under the basket. That's kind of the hallmark of what Nate Lenzer's defense is all about. So the question is, how fine do they walk that line? Because if they try to go all in on, doubling Freeman and doing all that, they're going to leave themselves vulnerable to a lot of open looks for Creighton. I don't think that's a recipe you want to take.
I think some of it's going to depend too on the lineup, right? If they're playing two bigs and they're doubling, who are you doubling with? If you're not doubling with the opposite big, then you're that other big now is potentially in rotations. And I don't know if that's depending on who it is, I don't know if that's what you want. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I'm coaching this game for Creighton, I'm saying run, push the ball, I don't want Rienk in the game. So I'm going to run as much as I can and push the pace as much as I can to try to get him to sit down for a bit. Because I think we got a better shot with him on the bench. So do you want to put Rienk in those positions? And that's why I wonder and I'm not in any way implying he's not conditioned, because he obviously is, but if he's guarding the low post versus guarding Jason on the perimeter a little bit and running around more, I do think that plays more to Creighton's strengths. But if you switch it, now you've got Berke on the perimeter, and both those guys have started, all the games that they've played, right? So I think that's how they'll start. I mean, who knows? It'll be
Yeah,
really
I would
fun to see.
imagine they're not going to vary up their starting lineup. It's just a matter of like what they lean on as the game starts to feel itself out a little bit, and a lot of that is going to be dependent on how well Creighton shoots it. If Creighton
Well,
comes
yeah,
out and starts blitzing them from the 3-point line, then they're obviously going to have to adapt. But if they're struggling from three and you can take away the paint, that's kind of the ideal formula right there. So a lot of it is just going to go by feel for the game. But I will say that Rienk is no stranger to playing, smaller lineups. So if they'd go with Jason Green on him, this whole non-con has been basically him against smaller
Sure.
bigs, and he's a perimeter guy himself. Like he's
Yep.
not a traditional back to the basket guy. I mean, he hit 7 threes against Winthrop. So like
Yeah.
that's kind of a game he likes to play as well, where they let Berke
Which
do
is
the
yeah.
dirty work
Which is
down
why I
low.
think you have to guard him with Jason, because
Yeah.
I don't think you want Owen on him.
Yeah, I think that would be probably a mismatch for Creighton.
Well, and the scout's going to be so interesting for this one too, right? Because about doubling the low post, like you were just talking about, Robin, was really how they attacked Ryan Kalkbrenner the two times they've had success in Omaha, is they just threw as many bodies at him as possible. Now this Creighton team looks a whole lot different, and I don't think there's a necessity to guard Owen Freeman. That's not a diss to Owen by any stretch of the imagination. I just think Berke can do that by himself. So it's going to be really interesting to see how defensively Creighton or offensively Creighton spaces the floor, and how Fred Hoiberg adjusts his defense accordingly to that as well, because of Jason's ability to hit 3-point shots as well. But also, I mean, Creighton hasn't really shown you the presence in the paint that really deems the respect of a double team in the low post up until this point in the season either.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm leaning. I don't know if they necessarily need to overcommit the way that they have in previous years. They did that just kind of out of survival, like because they knew their only chance was make anybody but Kalkbrenner beat them, and it worked for them sometimes, and then other times Baylor Shireman burns up the nets on them. So it's kind of one of those just kind of pick your poison type things, and more often than not, they're going to make teams beat them from the 3-point line rather than beat them at the rim.
Yeah, and talking about like previous games and matchups, the game Jimmy, we were talking the other day about the year we went in there and Ryan Nemhard and Trey, they were freshmen, and it nobody really, I felt like, again, I was on the staff, a little partial, but a lot of people didn't give us a chance. I felt like people thought Nebraska was going to roll us that day. Just we were young and not ready to play in that type of environment. And I was really proud of the effort, that our guys showed. This to me is interesting because Creighton has been a little disappointing thus far, trying to still figure things out. Nebraska's been so good. And the talk that I've seen and heard around town is very similar to that year, where the expectations are Nebraska's going to win. And certainly they'll be favored. They're at home. What do you think of the mentality of this team versus maybe teams of the past in this matchup?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation in that it's a little different compared to previous years. For one, you got a bunch of guys that have played in this game before. There's been so many times where with every roster reset, every offseason, the guys are brand new to it. And so they don't have nearly the background or understanding of the intensity that comes with that game. Whereas Creighton had guys that were like locked in, like I'm sure you remember those practices leading up to those games. It was like, this is our game, and they played like it and it carried over in the game. Whereas, I think that sometimes that caught Nebraska off guard because they just didn't really understand the mentality you needed for that game. Well, they got a roster full of guys that have played in this game before and understand it. And I think the difference between this group and previous groups is for the first time in forever, they got a bunch of guys that have actually beaten Creighton. They've won 2 of the last 3. Sam Hoiberg's won 2 of the last 3. Rienk was on the team, I guess he didn't play last year, but, he was on the sideline when they went up to Omaha and won. And so, like, they have guys that have experienced success against Creighton to where, like, it's not a matter of, boy, I hope we get him this year. It's like, well, we went in Omaha and beat him last year. Like, why wouldn't we? We're at home this year. We're 8-0. Like, why wouldn't we expect to win that game? So I think the recent kind of turn to where Nebraska's actually been competitive in this series has maybe changed the confidence dynamic internally within the program. Now, again, all bets are off once that ball's tipped, and there's the emotion of this game is unlike any other on Nebraska's schedule. So this is a team that has struggled out of the gates, especially at home. And if they, sputter around and miss their first 8 threes and Creighton catches fire early, then all of a sudden it's a oh no type moment. How does this group respond to that in that setting when there actually are expectations? You're favored to win this rivalry game that is a critical point. Not only is it setting the tone going into Big Ten play, but if you win this, 11-0 non-con is very much on the table, and that could be huge for your resume standpoint and all that. So there's a lot riding on this game, a lot of pressure on Nebraska to rise to the occasion. And, again, I guess the good news is this team has faced some adversity before. They're going to have an electric sold-out home crowd on their side, and how they just handle all of the emotions and outside buzz that comes with this game will ultimately define, in my mind, how this game goes.
This is the Roll Jays podcast brought to you by Pepper Jack's Grill and Pyramid Contractors. We catch up with Robin Washut of Husker online here on the podcast. Robin, I want to talk about the makeup of this team. And obviously, you can only go judged based off what they've done so far this season, 9-0. But it's a bunch of familiar faces, to your point. Throw Berke and Rienk and Sam into that equation. Obviously, with Connor Segan being out, he's still going to be on the bench of this team. Is it fair to say that Nebraska is having the success that they've had this year because this team has been able to put it together for 2 and 3 years, and you're kind of seeing a finished product of this combination of guys?
Yeah, I mean, they've, I think, done a good job of actually retaining a core nucleus, and obviously getting Rienk back is the big domino that fell. But then, keeping glue guys like Sam, who wasn't going anywhere, but like Cale Jacobson, and getting Berke back, and getting guys that have been in the program for more than just a few months, like just not having to learn how to play together on the fly, where you have a group that understands the day-to-day and what the expectations are, how to do things, what Fred wants, on and off the court, and then supplementing that with just mature guys. Bringing in a Price Sanford, who is like zero problems whatsoever. Like, he knows how to handle his business. And, getting in like just veteran senior 22, 23, 24-year-old guys that, they're men. They're not boys coming in here. So I think that they've finally found the right formula where it starts with retaining your core group and then supplementing, as opposed to doing a complete roster reset, which they've fallen into far too often earlier in Fred's tenure. So I think that's kind of been, you go back, Fred always mentions the 22-23 team with Greasel, Bandamel, Derek Walker. That was kind of when they got this formula down with how they're going to construct their roster, the types of guys they're going to recruit. And now I think, like I said, they've got a little bit more firepower. Not only are they just like high character guys, they've got, a roster full of shooters, and they're surrounded by an all conference level big that has really allowed Fred's kind of, I think, picture of what he wanted this team to be finally come to fruition for really the first time since he's been here.
I think it's a great call. And I think when you look at teams, it's cliche, but I do think it's true. Teams tend to take on the personality of their head coach. And there's been so many years that we've, I don't pay super close attention to Nebraska basketball, unless we were going to play them and I was on the scout, something of that nature. Now, as just a fan, I watch it a little bit more, but for the most part, it kind of always felt like his teams, it was like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Oh, yeah.
And now that, because, Coach he is such a, he's a really good person, but he's very laid back. He just kind of wants a lot of non like drama guys, and there's, you could really draw some similarities with Coach Mack in that. They just want to be able to coach their team and go home at night and lay their head down and not worry, about that. And I think that's interesting for some of your comments there, that you're kind of giving me the impression that he's just very comfortable coaching this team. And then when you see him on the floor and the way they shoot the ball, it's like, yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. That's what Coach did. But one of the things I've noticed them is they're so good in transition, and they really look like in transition, they're not just trying to score, but they're trying to score from the perimeter. Like, that's an emphasis what they're doing in transition.
No doubt.
Do you see it that way? And do you think that was part of the recruiting that they did, is trying to take advantage of that in this league that they're in?
Yeah, 100%. I think after last year, Fred made a decision, like, if you are not a 35% 3-point shooter, thanks, but no thanks. Like, we're not going to do that again. We're not going to have 2-point guards that can't shoot threes. Like, that was what they fell into last year, and it killed them. Like, they lost games because they could not shoot the basketball. So Fred said never again, and went and got, proven bona fide shooters at every single position. Even the bigs they brought in, like Oogie and Jared Garcia, those are 30+% 3-point shooters for their career that at least provide the threat. Like, teams have to say, well, this guy can make it, where Braxton Mia is on the perimeter. You don't have to guard him, so that's kind of like the transition between this group is, so they went all in on shooting, but then also they went all in on getting, grown-ups, kids they don't have to babysit, and that understand how to do their job the right way. And that's, again, why like a guy like Cale Jacobson came out of nowhere, and he's playing so much as he is right now because he's always in the right spot. You never have to worry about him screwing up an assignment or, being in the wrong spot, because he understands that offense probably as much as anybody but Fred. So like they have got a roster full of guys like that have the maturity, the mental capacity to not only do their jobs the way Fred wants them to on the court, but then once they leave practice, there's zero worries about those guys going and doing God knows what. Because those first few years, like when Matt Abdelmassi was recruiting basically just whoever the best transfer was available without any thought as to roster construction,
Yeah.
I mean, they were just a bunch of misfits. It was awful. And like the culture in that program was terrible. And like I know Fred was not enjoying any part of that. And so again, I think that goes back to that 22-23 year where Fred was like, you know what? We're not doing this anymore. And you let Matt go to St. John's and brought in Nate Lenzer, and they really kind of just owned in on culture. And I think this is kind of the long-term growth from a culture standpoint of where they were in 21-22 when they had a bunch of guys that were just out for themselves, to now where you actually have a team. You got a bunch of guys that play off of each other, like each other, and do things the right way in every aspect.
Sorry, Jimmy, let me just follow up with one thing. There is what's really interesting about that to me too is the timing that switch was made, really, because you could argue that he was in trouble, and and maybe you don't even have to argue it, but I think I have a lot of respect for that, because when you're just going to say, you know what, no, we're going to do it this way because I believe in doing it this way, regardless of what happens. If it doesn't work out and I get fired, I get fired. But at least I'm going to go down doing it my way. I think you're hearing a lot more of that throughout college basketball. I think you hear it some ways with Coach Mack, and obviously I know Coach, and he really wants to be around good people that are high character, that know how to play the game, but he doesn't want to have to worry about what they're doing, like you said, off the court. But you even hear it in press conferences, like, we're going to play the guys that do what we tell you to do. And I think you're seeing more and more of that around it. And so I don't have maybe more of a question than a comment of, I think it's interesting, and fans should respect the fact that to make that switch and just say, screw it, I'm doing it this way, knowing what's on the line, to me, it's really commendable. And it gives you a product you can be proud of as a fan, as an alumnus, right? Of, what's on the court is what you believe in. And I have a lot of respect for that. But would you, besides that, do you think just there's like the program, the way it feels right now is a result of that? Because the more I hear Nebraska basketball fans talk about, they're excited, and it's, yes, they're 8-0, they're happy about that, but they just feel like there's a light to their program right now, and versus maybe how they feel about football.
Yeah, and I think the winning obviously helps. You get the casual fans on board, but I think there's just the fact that they are, a much more likable team. They play a brand of basketball that's a team brand of basketball. It's not just individuals looking to go out and get theirs and try to bolster their draft stock. Like they've got guys that understand kind of how to play into the system and want to play a team brand of basketball. And again, when you got guys that are up there and they handle themselves with class and they do things the right way, that represent their state the right way, that goes a long way in just building real morale within your fan base. So again, they've had good guys before and they didn't win anything, so that only takes you so far. So when you compare having a great culture with actual team success to give fans something to cheer about, that's kind of the ideal scenario that so far is working out for them to this point.
I didn't have Casey Matthews taking a random stray at Nebraska football in my bingo card. There's that.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe you answer this with as simple as the way they've kind of changed the roster, but is there anything that feels different about Fred Hoiberg in 2025 that maybe he didn't have in his arsenal or wasn't coaching like the style he is now through these first 9 games previous to this year?
I mean, he's a lot more comfortable. I think he's enjoying the job a lot more than he
That
has. I
helps,
think
right?
when you coach without that just like weight and stress on you, that I think just makes you a better coach. You're able to kind of get into your bag a little bit more, and you trust guys more to maybe call some actions that other guys might not be able to do, or you don't trust them to do. And then I think the other factor is, again, it just goes back to Rienk. Like when you have a versatile big that can facilitate and shoot the way Rienk can, that is what makes Fred's system what it is. You go back to his Iowa State teams, all his best teams had that big. And so now he finally has that type of center, and they've, again, surrounded him with a roster full of dudes that can shoot. And so now he's able to really run the scheme that he wants, play with the pace that he wants, that made him so good at Iowa State. And it took a long time to do it here, but now they're finally in that situation where this is about as much of a Fred Hoiberg team as there's been over the last 7 years since his arrival.
And I was just thinking about this as you guys were, kind of talking there, is how much of that maybe involves his son and the role that now, like when he was younger and just got on, it felt like he was good enough to play, but in a way of like, almost like coach didn't want to play him because he didn't maybe want to feel like he was giving favoritism for playing him. Even though when you turn on the tape, I mean, he was scrappy, always in the right spots. He played with emotion. He played with fire, like all the things that you want in a player. But maybe because of NIL or because of whatever it might be, you felt like, I don't want to play my son as much. But now it just feels like, at least it's like, you know what? He's one of our best 5 players. I'm starting him and I'm playing him. Do you think that's any part of it, that you feel that in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that was probably in the back of his mind, that he probably felt weird about giving his son minutes, let alone starting him. But the reality is that Sam's one of their best players. I mean, especially this season. He has emerged as the ultimate glue guy, where he does so many things, especially now that he's expanded his game to be more of an offensive threat. Like before, if you got like 6 points out of him, you're feeling pretty good. Now he's scoring double figures, and he's winning them the game against Kansas State in a neutral site in Kansas City. Like that evolution of him as an offensive weapon, paired with him being as good of a defender as he is on the other end, has really made him a guy that they don't want to take him off the floor. And so I think maybe while there was some, people thought it was nepotism or whatever, that it was just coach playing his kid. For one, Sam's earned the right to start, earned the right to get the amount of minutes that he has, and then the other factor is he is literally a copy and paste of his dad. And so you have another coach on the court at all times when he's out there. And so, we talk about guys understanding where they need to be. Sam's played for his dad his entire life. And so he knows that system more than anyone else in the entire program, maybe outside of his old man. So that having that on the court to basically, when they're in the huddles, or free throws, or whatever, like just having that voice, his leadership is probably one of the more underappreciated parts of his game. He's scoring at a higher level. He's defended at always an extremely high level, but he's kind of become one of the faces of that team. They took him to media days. They made him a representative of Nebraska basketball this year. And again, he's earned that right with the way that he's played.
Is Younghoe Koo going to be the Giants kicker by the end of the season?
God. Why do you have to talk about the Giants? I thought we were going to make it through this half-hour interview without it. No, I don't know. Like I would at this point just the Giants not kick ever again. Between the Graham Gano debacle with Younghoe and whoever they line up there, the Scottish dude that they brought in or whatever, like, God, give me a break. We've lost so many games because of our just disastrous, inept, completely joke of a special teams. And now you got me all fired up. Thanks.
I wish. I'm a Dolphins fan. I'm a Dolphins fan, but I wish you'd just be honest instead of sugarcoating how you feel. Is there anybody on the? We're switching back to basketball. Just a heads up to you. Is there anybody on this team that's really surprised you so far, and like maybe something you didn't expect to see 8 games in that you're really encouraged by?
I mean, Sam as a scorer is in that conversation. That's a new part of his game. Kind of the evolution of Price Sanford's game. When he was at Iowa, they didn't really let him do much besides like stand in the corner and catch and shoot. And one of the reasons why he wanted to come to Nebraska was to showcase that there's more to his game than that. And seeing him beat guys off the dribble and get to the rim and finish at the rim and defensive rebounds, like all the things that really he wasn't known for at all, as a Hawkeye, he's really kind of taken put new layers to his game. So that's been a pleasant surprise, right up there with Sam actually becoming a legitimate offensive threat.
Who do you put a better percentage on of showing up to the game? Fran McCaffrey with his 3 former players being on the court, or Sean Callahan to take this game in?
Oh, Sean will be there. He's a season ticket holder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's in the lower bowl. He'll be there. I'm
He
sure.
tends to do other things on the weekends. That's why.
Oh yeah. He might have to coach his kid's soccer game or
Sure.
whatever they're playing. Basketball. They're playing basketball right now. So
Hey,
who knows? He's a
one
busy
other
man.
lineup. One other lineup question is who do you see the Jays guarding? Or who do you see guarding Sam? Starting the game off versus Price. That one to me is interesting.
I don't know. I don't know if like Sam is the type of guy that you need to like assign an individual. Like you kind of probably just defend him within the flow of the defense. Price is the interesting one because of his size. Like I would normally say, well, like what about like a Jason Green? Because Jason's got probably similar build to him, maybe a little bit bigger. That could take him out of the equation a little bit. And Nebraska's such a streaky team, and when they're hot, a lot of times it's Price Stanford getting it going. So I would probably prioritize him a little bit higher on the scouting report if I'm Creighton, because Sam will get his, but Price is the one that can hit 3 straight threes in a row. And
that's why I'm asking you that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
I'm gonna say Josh Dix.
I'm not familiar enough with Creighton's defensive personnel to give you like a perfect answer on that. But I would say, as far as like where I'm prioritizing my matchups and assignments, I'm going Price over Sam any day.
But the interesting thing though is that leaves Blake Harper on Sam.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about size and it's just going to be interesting. I'm really fascinated by the matchups in this game.
There's going to be a ton of switching on both sides. There's going to
yeah. And Creighton's going to switch everything, and there's so much screening and off the ball screening. And the way Nebraska plays defense is they'll switch everything, even on the weak side when there's off ball screens. They don't care. So you're going to get matchup issues, but it'll still be fun to watch. I'm excited.
Robin,
to see it.
Robin, we'll get you out of here on this. I know we're going to get a ton of people that are Nebraska football fans that are watching this. Do you have a preference for who Nebraska goes and gets as a defensive coordinator for their football program?
I mean, this is such a critical hire. I would hope that they swing big. I'm personally way big on the Jim Leonard hire. I don't know how realistic that is, but I thought that Hay should have targeted him the first time around. I think he would be a perfect fit for what Nebraska needs with his Big Ten experience. Justin Wilcox is in that conversation. I think he would fit that mold of a big swing for Matt Rule. But I don't know at this point. Like a lot of it is just kind of who's willing to work with Matt Rule. Like that's kind of the situation you're in. Like, because you can go and get a big time guy with a big time ego, and if that doesn't fit, well, then you're on to 4th defensive coordinator in 4 years. So like they got to get somebody that works at the level that Matt Rule does and operates at the level that Matt Rule does, because if they don't have that mesh, then it probably won't go very well. So the resume is one thing, the name is another thing, but how that kind of behind the scenes chemistry plays out is just as important, because I think that was an issue with why John Butler's not here anymore.
Yeah. Jimmy, hold on before you wrap it up. We got to end this on hoops.
Yeah,
I couldn't care any less about Nebraska football. And I come for me. It doesn't matter.
At CMAT33.
Yeah, that's fine. Totally fine with me. Play out the scenario. Nebraska wins. Nebraska loses. We're talking hoops. What's the reaction from the fans on both scenarios, and what does it mean to the program in both scenarios?
Oh, I'm sure the winner, whatever the winning fan base, will be handled it perfectly, cordially,
classy,
not talk trash talk or anything like that. Yeah, I mean that's what the rivalry is. I mean, you got bragging rights for another year or for a year, so like that, that's kind of part of the deal. That's why people are sweating this game so much, especially on Nebraska. Like, I think you said a lot of fans feel confident. I see just as many fans like, oh no, like Creighton's just starting to figure it out after the Nicholls State game. Like, oh no, the picture's coming together. I know how this game ends. So like, there will always be that aspect of it, that there's just the emotional roller coaster of every single possession is, that's what makes it so much fun. But if Nebraska wins again, like there's going to be we beat our rival thing. but they only have a few more days before they're open in Big Ten play. And you got Wisconsin coming to town. So they'll celebrate it for a few days and hopefully not getting fat and happy going into that one because they could get humbled real quick. And then just from the long-term perspective, winning that game gets you probably to 11-0, and that's a great feather in your cap for your resume. Gives you another marquee non-conference win because I think Creighton's only going to keep getting better from here. And so, like, there's a lot of value in that. If you lose it, that's a home loss, and you're coming off a year where you lost a lot of critical home games, and you're starting slow at home every time. And if they do it again in a game of this magnitude, you worry about doubt starting to creep in a little bit, especially with Big Ten right around the corner. So there's a lot of ways Nebraska can go win or loss on this one. A win, I think they're riding high into those first two Big Ten games, and all of a sudden you're looking at it as a legitimate NCAA tournament team. If they lose it, then you got to really wonder how they're going to respond, especially with things not getting any easier going forward.
That is future New York Giants special teams coordinator Robin Washut. You can follow him online at Robin Washut on
No
Twitter.
kicks.
Subscribe to HuskerOnline.com today. Robin, we appreciate your time. We'll catch up with you maybe after a Creighton or Nebraska win. Thanks for your time, bud.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Go ahead and kill it, Case.